afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another debate show for you this afternoon where we're going to be grading each League One club's January transfer window. Joining me is my colleague Toby Wilding. Toby, how are you getting on this afternoon?
Yeah, good, thanks. Just as we were sort of talking about off air, going to be really interesting all this to get into. You know, there's plenty of clubs, a lot who've done a great deal of business, so some really eye-catching signings to get into, and there's plenty to cover during the course of the show. So yeah, should be fun to really, pay tribute and perhaps lay into some of these clubs and what they were able to do over the past month.
Absolutely. It's going to be a stacked show, so do stick with us. We will eventually get to your club for any League One fans joining us. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter this afternoon. So if you are joining us and you want to send in your grade for your club or a League One club's business this January, please do, and we'll get it up on the show. We're going to go through these in alphabetical order, so we'll get straight into it. First up then, Accrington Stanley, who sit 14th in the League One table at the minute. Dion Charles arrived from Bolton. Additions included Marcel Lewis on loan, Adedoyne from Sheffield Wednesday and Longelo from Newcastle. Toby, let's kick things off with Accrington then. What are you grading them and why?
Yeah, I've gone for a B here. I think it's been a pretty good window for Accrington, in fairness. As you mentioned, Dion Charles, obviously he moved on to Bolton, which, you know, in other circumstances might have been disappointing. But when you consider the fact that he'd been pretty much exiled from the squad since all the way back in August, September, having not signed a new contract, and with that deal then, you know, being into its final few months at this point, to sort of get the sort of fee that was talked about for him, I think it was around 320,000 they received for him. So that's not bad money for a club at this level for a player into the final 6 months of his contract. So I think that's good for them. As you say, I think a few of the signings were impressive as well. I mean, a couple of Premier League pedigree players there, as you say, with Fraser, Longelo from Newcastle and J. Rich Bagulu. Trying to read my own handwriting there, never a good idea, from Crystal Palace. So there's, you know, some promising youngsters in there who've come through as well. So I think they've sort of got that pedigree in the potential to sort of really push on beyond this season, when obviously it looks like it's going to be another solid League One campaign. And as you say, they added a nice little late bit of business from Sheffield Wednesday. And I think the other important thing is, obviously, having lost Dion Charles, they have managed to keep hold of their other main scorer in Colby Bishop. Obviously, there was a bit more talk about him in the summer. There might have been a few concerns about that emerging again this month, but it didn't really happen to that extent. So I think keeping him is useful as well, given the departure of Dion Charles. So all in all, a pretty solid window for Accrington.
Yeah, a fairly steady grade there, really. And I think that the Dion Charles point that you make, losing him, but in the circumstances, it wasn't a bad thing and a decent window overall. On to AFC Wimbledon then, currently 20th in the table. Lee Brown's arrived from Portsmouth, Nathan Broom from Stoke and Sam Cosgrove on loan from Birmingham. Ollie Palmer has joined Wrexham. Let's have your thoughts on AFC Wimbledon's January transfer window then, Toby.
Yeah, again, gone for a B, pretty solid window, I'd say, for Wimbledon. As you say, losing Ollie Palmer's a blow, but it sounds like they got a reasonably decent fee for him, a club record for Wrexham. So that's a useful bit of money for them to reinvest in. Obviously, they moved to replace him quite well with Sam Cosgrove coming in on loan from Birmingham. Obviously, it didn't really work out for him at St Andrews or at Shrewsbury during the first half of the season, but his record with Aberdeen shows that he is a goal scorer when given the opportunity, and he knows where the net is. So if you can find that at Wimbledon, could be a really useful signing for them. And obviously, Terry Blade, I think, as well, came in from Fulham. That's another attacking option they've sort of given themselves. And yeah, Lee Brown as well. I think that's a really good signing. You know, he's been around this league for a long time. Generally with Portsmouth, you know, sort of pushing up towards the higher end of the table. Well, he's been at Fratton Park, so that as well, having to play with that sort of pedigree and experience could be useful for Wimbledon in this relegation battle that they seem to be in. So, yeah, again, another pretty solid window.
On to Burton Albion then, currently 10th in the table. Tom O'Connor is another that's moved to Wrexham in the window. Sam Hughes was a deadline day arrival from Leicester City. He's a player with plenty of Premier League 2 experience. And Daniel Jebison was, of course, recalled by Sheffield United. Burton Albion then, Toby, what's your grade and why?
Burton, again, you might be sensing a theme here, gone for a B. Obviously, Jebison recall is a blow because he was really starting to find form, it looked like, at the Pirelli Stadium. So that sort of seems to have happened just at the wrong time again. I think as well, probably worth noting the departure of Lucas Akins, an absolute club legend there, gone to Mansfield. So bit of a shame to see him go, but I think they've responded well. Obviously, they made Hughes' deal from Leicester City permanent after a few loan spells, so he knows the club. They've got Ghassan Ahadme in from Norwich. He's sort of spelled with Portsmouth, never really worked out, but he and Harry Chapman, who's back on loan from Blackburn, they're two players who, when things go for him, can really make things happen up front. So that should go some way to offsetting the loss of Jebison, and I think as well. Kokolo, who's coming from Middlesbrough. I think the fact that they moved to sort of make that a permanent deal when initially a loan was being talked about sort of shows the statement of intent there from Burton, and is probably a bit of a useful move to be out of the clubs, it seems, by doing that.
On to Cambridge then, currently 13th. Laurent Talage has joined, as well as Sam Shering. Leon Davis joins Southend United on a free as well during the January transfer window. What are you grading Cambridge then, Toby?
Cambridge, it was quite a quiet window really for Cambridge. So I've just gone fairly standard for a C with Cambridge. It's sort of hard to really judge them any more than that, given there's not really been any major ins or outs at the Abbey Stadium. So it's just a fairly solid window. Sam Shering is going to be useful at the back, and Laurent Talage can offer them something else up front. So not a bad window, just not a particularly spectacular one either.
No, absolutely. I think a C's fair enough there. On to Charlton then. Chuks Aneke, Scott Fraser, Juan Castillo, Niall John, amongst those arriving. Mason Burstow joining Chelsea, but returning on loan. They're the headlines from the Valley. What are we grading them?
What have I gone for Charlton here? I've gone for a C for Charlton as well, which now that I think about it, maybe a little bit harsh. I think Aneke is a popular player to bring back, and sort of interesting that they've got that done so soon after he left, only going to Birmingham in the summer, but he's already sort of started to hit the ground running with a couple of goals. Scott Fraser, I think, is obviously a very useful sort of statement of intent for Charlton there, coming from Ipswich. Obviously, it didn't quite work out for him at Portman Road, but you look at his sort of impact at MK Dons at the past, he's clearly a player who can do a lot at this level. Castillo loan and Niall John both on loan. Those are two useful loan signings, promising Premier League pedigree style players. Obviously, Mason Burstow, that's going to be a disappointment for Charlton losing him, but there is a bit of a consolation there in that they have got him back on loan for the season, so they can still use him now. And of course, the fact that it looks like they should get a good fee for him. The one concern for me is it did seem as though after the departure of Josh Davison on loan, there was a few sort of calls for another striker, which didn't come. So that's perhaps why I've graded them slightly lower here. But even so, maybe a B or a C seems about right for Charlton.
Yeah, C plus or B minus. What do you think?
Oh, well, we'll go a B minus because some of those incomes can be really useful.
On to 16th place, Cheltenham then. Charlie Brown, Reece Hutchinson, Aaron Ramsey, Aston Villa's Aaron Ramsey, not the Welsh international Aaron Ramsey. Amongst those coming in, Kyle Vassell and Chris Hussey have moved on. Cheltenham Town then, Toby.
I actually went quite high here. I've given them an A as well, funnily enough. I think, eight players in, that's some really sort of good movement in the window. A few eye-catching signings in there. And Lundulu actually watched him for Lincoln, I think it was, during the first half of the season at Wigan, and I was really impressed with him there. I thought he made a lot happen. So I'd say that's a real good signing for them. Ramsey, as you say, coming from Villa as well. I think obviously we saw a few players depart for Cheltenham, the likes of Kyle Vassell and Dan Crowley, who were, useful sort of quality players who had been quite important for them the first half of the season. But I think the moves they've made, they've done well to replace and sort of fill them voids. So yeah, I'm impressed with what I've seen from Charlton there.
Just remind me, it was an A, wasn't it?
Yes, an A.
Yeah. Crew then, to wrap up the first part of the show, currently sitting 22nd in the table. Raheem Harper was a late arrival that really caught my eye on deadline day. And I think that was a good move amongst some pretty good late business on the whole from Crew. 4 permanent outgoings as well. Let's have their grade. And do you think they've done enough to keep themselves in League One this season?
It's a tough one to call, Crew. I mean, I think for their fans, the sort of the slow movement will have been quite frustrating. It was only in the final few days of the window that we sort of saw them, do any business. So that sort of has left them playing catch up a bit in comparison to the other clubs that they're sort of battling with to sort of avoid relegation. So that has sort of influenced me in marking them down a bit. But I think Dan Adjei from Oxford, that's an eye-catching signing in bringing a bit of firepower. Salu Sambu can do that as well. Raheem Harper, as you say, it's a bit of a surprise when you look at how he started out at West Brom that he's now finding himself in a League One relegation battle to get game time. So that really sort of shows the quality he has and the point that he has to prove, which could be useful for Crewe. And as well, Tariq Wakwe coming in permanently from Chelsea. That's quite impressive as well for me. I mean, he was quite a solid player for Accrington at this level last season. So the fact that Crewe have been able to get him, despite the fact they're further down the table, is pretty impressive for me. So, yeah, I'm going to say a C for them.
Very good. Right, on to the next 8 teams in League One. We're going to kick things off with the bottom of the table, Doncaster Rovers. Adam Clayton, Mipo Odebeko, Ben Jackson, just some of those players to arrive at Doncaster during the January transfer window. Omar Bogle moving on. Toby, Doncaster are a funny one, aren't they? Let's have your grade and your reason why here.
Yeah, as we were sort of mentioning just before we came on air here, it seems strange to say in the circumstances, but I've been really impressed by Doncaster's business this month. So I actually went for an A here, putting my neck on the line perhaps a bit there, given the as you say, sat bottom of the table and took a bit of a beating off Rotherham last night. But I mean, Rotherham are top of the table. It's not games like that are going to determine whether or not Doncaster stay up, in all honesty. And the business, I think, has been really good. Kieran Agard and Adam Clayton coming in, that's some really useful experience at this level, and with a couple of players who can play here and potentially even further up the divisions if necessary. Ollie Younger's coming from Sunderland. He should help shore up the defence. And I think Rio Griffiths as well is a really exciting signing. Obviously, former Tottenham youth player, and he's come from Lyon on a permanent deal. So that to me looks like a really impressive, exciting piece of business to get him in as a young striker with a lot to prove. So, yeah, I mean, it's been tough for Doncaster so far, but it might just have given them a chance with some of this business that they've done so far in the window. So, yeah, impressed with them.
Right, you've just alerted me that we have missed Bolton Wanderers. I'm apologising to any Bolton fans there that are tuning in for it. Currently 11th in the table. Dion Charles, as we mentioned earlier in the show, has arrived. John Dadi Budvarson as well, looking another eye-catching arrival. Owen Doyle, Ronan Darcy and Nathan Delfonso among those. Moving on just quickly, Toby, what was your grade for Bolton and why?
Yeah, I went with an A for Bolton. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure quite how Dion Charles was going to do at Bolton. I thought it might have been a bit of a risk, given he'd not been playing for so long and sort of the fee they'd paid for him. But to be fair to him, he's absolutely hit the ground running there, scoring already a couple in the win at Sunderland and a stunning winner late on at Shrewsbury. So he, like I say, he's already making a big impact. Jan Dadi Bodvarsson backs him up in attack. I think that's impressive signing to get from a championship side in Millwall. They've got Kyle Dempsey over the line on deadline day. That'll be really pleasing for them to get a target who seems to have been a long-term sort of aspiration for Ian Effort to finally get him in. And Marlon Fossey, another on loan from Fulham, already seems to be really impressing, and sort of already seems to be talk about permanent deal being looked at for him if they can get one done. So that, I guess, shows how good he's been. So yeah, with the way that their business is already making an impact on the pitch, I've given them an A.
Yeah, a really good window for Bolton. On to Fleetwood then, currently 19th in the table. Ellis Harrison, Josh Harrop and Daniel Butterworth amongst those to arrive. Callum Morton was one to depart, returning to West Brom and then moving on to Peterborough in the window. So have your grade for Fleetwood, Toby?
I've gone for a C here because I feel like it was a very sort of mixed window. You know, they brought in quite a lot of decent signings, but also they lost a few key players. Obviously, James Hill to Bournemouth, Matete as well, right on the deadline almost to Sunderland. So they'll be disappointing to lose on top of Callum Morton as well. But as we say, there's a lot coming as well. Ellis Harrison already scoring goals for them, so he's sort of filling that attacking void left by Morton pretty well. NCR, Zach Jules, Josh Harrop, Kieran O'Hara from Burton late on as well. They're all players who know this division well, and who can make an impact here. And Dan Butterworth, from my Blackburn perspective, really excited to see how he does now. He's finally got a low move at Viwood Park. I think he's one who's shown, even at the Championship, he can really make an impact with sort of his runs and his drives forward when he's on that sort of form. Obviously, he's still waiting for the goals there, but he has been prolific at youth level, so he could be another useful signing up front for Fleetwood. So yeah, sort of a very mixed bag in terms of good signings, but disappointing to lose some good players as well. So a C there.
Absolutely. I've just lost my notes. I don't know where they've gone. It's Gillingham next, isn't it? Yeah, just run us through Gillingham and their business, Toby, and what you grade them.
Yeah, obviously changes off the pitch as well for Gillingham with the departure of manager Steve Evans and Neil Harris coming in, and I think that's really sort of helped Gillingham as well, because obviously we saw Harris appointed late on in January, and following that Ben Thompson arriving following his release from Millwall, so there's a bit of a reunion there, and I think that's really going to help Gillingham in terms of what they can do, given Thompson's a quality player, even at the Championship when he gets his opportunities there, and obviously he's playing under a manager he knows in Harris, so that should bring the best out of him. Charlie Kelman back at the club for another loan spell, as is Connor Masterson, a couple of QPR players there who can really do some useful business for them on the pitch. Kelman obviously offering them another outlet up front, and Masterson helping to sort of shore things up at the back. I think, though, as we sort of touched on with Bolton, the departure of Kyle Dempsey will be a loss for Gillingham here because of how important he's been for them recently. So again, a bit of a mixed window. I've gone for a C here.
Yeah, down in 23rd, Gillingham. Just a quick note on Neil Harris, and he's got a tough job there, hasn't he? Do you think he's got the squad to give Gillingham a fighting chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good appointment for a team in Gillingham's position. When you sort of look at Harris's historic managerial roles in the past, to get him is really quite impressive, almost a bit of a statement from the Gills. And I think as well, we saw he started really well last night. I mean, it perhaps wasn't the most emphatic or convincing of wins, but 1-0 over Crewe, obviously, as we mentioned when we talk about them, they're down there in that relegation battle as well. So those are the games that Gillingham, if they are going to have a chance to stay up, just have to win one way or another, and they did that last night. So that was a really good start for Harris, and sort of gives him something now to build on as he gets more chance to work with the squad and implement his plans and his ideas for the club.
On to Ipswich Town then, currently 9th in the table. Tyreek Bakington arriving from Bristol City, Christian Walton coming in as well. McKenna really sort of streamlining the squad as well. There were a number of departures at Portman Road. What's your grade for Ipswich's window?
I'll be honest, I've gone for a D here. I thought it was a bit of a sort of a quiet window, especially towards the end. We saw the likes of, as we were saying, Scott Fraser and Raheem Harper out. John Nolan's been released as well. So, they did sort of weaken themselves in midfield, and it may well be the fact that that's just a start of a turnover again after the massive investment we saw from the club under Paul Cook in the summer. But I do wonder whether they might have just risked leaving themselves a bit short there in this window in comparison to some of the business from some of the other promotion chasing teams that we might be more set to come on to further on in the show. And yeah, I mean, it's one of them. They always had a strong squad, but that's sort of the fact that they seem to have let a few more go without bringing in maybe as many replacements as they might have needed. Just feels like a bit of a concern for me there. And it did seem to be, looking at the reaction of the fans on deadline day to the departure of Raheem Harper, there was a few questions about, where our midfielders going to come from now. So I think there's things to catch up on there that will certainly be covered.
Absolutely. Lincoln City next then. John Marquis arrives, Morgan Whittaker and Liam Cullen, all additions in the winter window. Not much in the way of outgoings. Let's have your grade for Lincoln.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty good window for Lincoln, in fairness. So I've given them a B. I mean, I think they were a bit unfortunate, weren't they, back in the summer on deadline day? There was something all lined up for Morgan Whittaker to come in from Swansea on loan, and then that fell through at the last minute. So that left them short of an attacker during the first half of the season. They rectified that very early on in the window, bringing him in, and then they sort of backed that up as well. John Marquis, as we say, coming in from Portsmouth, he's already started to hit the ground running, scoring goals for them. Ben Howes and Liam Cullen have really sort of gone from being quite short on attacking options to having a lot of firepower to call on. So yeah, with that in mind, I think that was sort of the main emphasis of this window for Lincoln. So they've done their job well there. I think obviously Norton Cafe coming in from Arsenal gives them an extra option defensively as well. So I'd say that's a pretty good window, hence the B for the Imps.
Absolutely. MK Dons currently sitting fourth. Kane Kessler, Connor Wickham, Dan Kemp all arriving. Andy Fisher departed, as did Matt O'Reilly, of course, moving to Celtic. Let's have your grade on MK's window then.
Yeah, I've gone B here. I think, as you say, Matt O'Reilly and Andy Fisher were two really important players for MK Dons that they have lost there, but they did seem to get a good deal for them. You know, some big fees that have come into the club for those two players, so that probably softens the blow a bit, and obviously helps knock that grade up, especially when combined with sort of the players that they've brought in as well. Connor Coventry, I guess, can fill that midfield role that O'Reilly's left with. Connor Wickham, if he can get fit, is a player who at this level you would expect can score goals. And Kane Kessler, really exciting player, isn't he, from Aston Villa? Really impressed at Swindon, I think, wasn't it, during the first half of the season. So for them to get him as well, that's really a good piece of business, I think. So yeah, despite the departures, I think the incoming to cancel that out a bit for MK Dons, so I've given them a B.
Good stuff. On to Morecambe then. Reece Bennett and Dylan Connolly, late additions at Morecambe. A couple of outgoings as well. How do you think Morecambe have done in the window? Obviously 21st in the League One table at the moment.
I've actually gone A. I think this has been a really good window for Morecambe, in all honesty. Jacob Badeau coming on loan from Burnley, and he's already been a massive boost in the defence for Morecambe, winning plenty of praise for what he's doing at centre-back for them. They brought in Trevor Carson to fill the void with Jocko Anderson's recall from his loan from Reading, so that sort of keeps the goalkeeping position full and competitive. Dylan Connolly's come in to offer the wing option that it seems the club wanted late on deadline day. I think Reece Bennett could be a really good signing for them. He's a solid League One defender, and I've written quite a lot of notes here, and there's only two words in the whole thing that are in capitals, and they are under Morecambe, kept Stockton. I think that's massive for them. 20 goals already this season. You felt like there was going to be some interest that was going to really put the pressure on them there with regards to him. And yeah, the fact that they've kept him is a real statement of intent. And the fact that they've got his goals now for the rest of the season is going to be a massive boost to their hopes of staying up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Badeau and keeping Stockton makes it a really good window for Morecambe. And I think that the A is more than justified there. On to Oxford then, currently sixth, Kieran Brown and Marcus Brown, late arrivals. They also managed to retain Cameron Brannigan, who was linked heavily with Blackpool during the transfer window. What are we grading Oxford?
Yeah, I've gone for a B here. I mean, perhaps based on the fact that there was only the free signings in, it wasn't the most busy of windows in terms of strengthening. But when you look at sort of the players that have come in, Marcus Brown obviously has already had his two loan spells there before, during which time he's done a lot for the club, really made a big impact. So that's going to be a really popular signing, and I think it's good for him as well to finally get that chance to play regular football again after those injury problems at Middlesbrough. Brannigan, as you say, keeping him, that's really important for them, given how important he is, not just with his penalties, but his all-round play as well. So, and Kieran Brown on loan from Cardiff in defence, that's another useful option to add to their sort of defensive ranks. So yeah, I'd say a pretty good window, but not the most eventful or spectacular. So yeah, that's why I've gone for a B for Oxford.
Plymouth Argyle up next, then currently sitting 7th in the table. Couple of decent loan signings, really. Stephen Sessignon and Romani Critchlow from Huddersfield Town. They moved on Kieran Agard as well. Plymouth's window, then Toby.
Yeah, written down it was a relatively quiet one for them, so not too much to shout about. Hence why I've only gone for a B here rather than perhaps an A. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Critchlow and Sessignon are two very good signings. Again, Critchlow, another who impressed at Swindon during the first half of the season. Really good bit of business there to get him in, give him that chance at a higher level, and he seems to be taking that well already. And Stephen Sessignon is quite a turn up for them at Plymouth to get this deal done. Obviously, a really promising player. It's not quite worked out for him yet, but he does have the quality to do a lot. If he gets the opportunity, he can take it. And I think as well that's a bit of a coup for them, given we sort of saw a lot of links with Hull City for Sessignon. So for Plymouth to get him in League One rather than seeing him join the Tigers revolution up in the Championship is a bit of a statement from them, and he should, again, another one who can help them as they look to sort of really push in that playoff position.
Yeah, absolutely. On to Portsmouth then, currently 12th in the table. Denver Hume, Aidan O'Brien and Tyler Walker amongst their signings. Harrison, Marquise, as we've already mentioned, moving on, as well as Lee Brown. How did you grade Portsmouth's window?
I've just gone for a C here. It feels like a hard one to call. It's sort of, as you say, Marcus and Harrison out up front have been replaced by Tyler Walker and Aidan O'Brien. I think Walker, to be fair, is a good signing, and we've seen what he can do sort of at this level before during his time with Lincoln. So that's an impressive one, but I do have a few questions about O'Brien. He's never really been the most prolific of options at Sunderland, so I wonder whether he'll be able to fill that void as the second striker to come in after the two going out. Obviously, it's only a 6-month deal as well, so it's not a huge show of confidence. I perhaps wouldn't say in him that it's only that length of deal. Nevertheless, elsewhere, Ollie Webber coming in from Palace between the posts, obviously that fills the void left by Alex Bass. And that is a permanent, so that's a good deal. And it means there's something in place there for when Gavin Bazanu heads back to City when his loan expires at the end of the season. And again, one other that I think is a good bit of business is Hayden Carter on loan from Blackburn. He was excellent at this level with Burton during the loan spell during the second half of last season. So to have him back at a level where we already know he can be a really good and a really solid centre-back is a good signing for Portsmouth. Good opportunity for him to play regular football, and it already seems as though he's starting to impress at Fratton Park. So yeah, a bit of a mixed window for Portsmouth.
Yeah, on to Rotherham then, the league leaders. There's been a couple of additions, but on my notes, I've just sort of looked at the big win being retaining the likes of Michael Smith and Dan Barlaser, really. Let's hear your thoughts on Rotherham's window and what you grade them, Toby.
Yeah, mine are sort of similar thoughts to what you said there, hence why I've gone for a B here. I think I'll say two things didn't work out for him at Forest during the first half of the season, but nevertheless, he could be a useful option at right back for the Millers during the second half of the season. As you say, I think keeping the key men is really important. Obviously, it does leave them a bit exposed to clubs sort of swooping in the summer when their contracts expire. The likes of Michael Smith and Chiadoze Bene, really important players for them. So yeah, I mean, like I say, they're at risk, but it also gives them a better chance, I would say, of winning promotion back to the Championship, and that in turn will give them a better chance of securing those players on longer term contracts. So in that sense, it's a pretty good turnout for Rotherham. I think the other thing I've obviously noted here is that Freddie Ladapo's still there despite the transfer request that went in, that sort of came a bit out of the blue. And the fact that he's still there, I don't think is a bad thing for Rotherham if he can, sort of get his head back in the here and now with the Millers. Then we saw during the first half of the season, the goals that he can score can make him a really useful backup for Michael Smith up front for Rotherham. So whilst it wasn't the busiest of windows, I think it has been a pretty good one for Paul Warne's side in terms of they've kept everyone they probably felt they needed to give them a chance of winning promotion.
Absolutely. On to Sheffield Wednesday, then currently 8th in the table. Jordan Storey, Harley Dean, John Jules all arriving. Lewis Wing has departed after a loan from Middlesbrough. What are you grading the transfer business at Hillsborough?
I'll be honest, I've only gone for a D here. I mean, I was impressed with what Wednesday did in the summer, but less so here. As you say, it's been a bit of a quiet window. I mean, Harley Dean and Jordan Storey do sort of give them a few extra options at centre back with the sort of the fitness issues that Shea Dunkley is having. Tyrese John Jules comes in up front after a bit of a frustrating loan spell, really, at Blackpool. Never really got the opportunities, and I just question whether that alone is going to be enough to give Wednesday the firepower that they need after the injury to top scorer Lee Gregory. He picked up. I know sort of Darren Moore spoke about potentially that might force them into the market for another centre forward. It doesn't really feel like that's happened quite as much as they might have wanted to. So I just wonder whether, in comparison to the teams they're battling with for a playoff place, they might in the long term over the next few months find that they've sort of left themselves a few short in terms of getting the goals they need to keep in that promotion battle.
Absolutely. Shrewsbury Town then next. Tom Flanagan arrived from Sunderland, and there was a fair few loan additions from clubs in higher divisions. Nathaniel Ogbeta also moving to Swansea permanently. Let's hear your thoughts on Shrewsbury's window.
Yeah, I've given them a B here. As you say, I think Ogbeta would, especially going so late in the window on deadline day to Swansea, that'll have been a bit of a kick in the teeth for them because was a really good player for them. So to lose him so late on when perhaps they've not really, put plans in place might have been tough to take, albeit Matt Bonswell comes in, he can sort of take over that left-back role. He's got the pedigree from Newcastle, and I think Shrewsbury did receive a fairly decent fee, I would have thought, for a better, so that, again, sort of offsets that loss. Forner and Jana, who both come in from Forest and Bristol City, respectively, on loan, they're players who really, you feel, have a bit of a point to prove to really show that they can get opportunities further up the divisions. And Tom Flanagan on a permanent, I think that's a really good signing. He's been around for a long time, but probably weren't going to get the chances at Sunderland with, as we'll come on to shortly, the defensive additions that they've brought in. So, Shrewsbury have really pounced there to take quite a useful opportunity, I would say, especially when you consider as well, we've seen clubs further up the divisions, again, linked with him in the past. So the fact that, again, they've been able to get that done might be seen as a bit of a coup for them. So despite the Ogbeta disappointment, I think on the whole, that's been a pretty good window.
Yeah, on to Flanagan's former club, Sunderland, then currently sitting third in the table. Jermaine Defoe obviously headlines the arrivals at the Stadium of Light, which also include Danny Bart, Patrick Roberts and Jack Clark. They've moved a fair few on, and Lee Johnson has, of course, been sacked. Quite an eventful January for Sunderland, wasn't it, Toby?
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start, really, when you run over all that. But I think to begin with, it probably is a bit difficult to determine how good a window this has been, because you're not quite sure how those signings that have been made, certainly the ones late in the window after Johnson's departure, which of course only came on Sunday, are actually going to have on sort of the plans of the new manager. Are they signings that whoever takes over from Johnson would have wanted to bring in and will feel he can get the best out of? So that might have an impact on their manager search. You just don't know in that sense. Nevertheless, Jermaine Defoe, what a story that is. Excellent signing. I don't think there's anyone, even neutrals, who are disappointed to see that happen, given, the sort of connection between the club and player the last time he was there. And obviously, he's still a player who, if he can score goals like he has throughout his career, will be massive for them on the pitch. And I think the experience, the leadership and the lift he will give the crowd will be just as important off it as well. At the other end of his career, Matete, as we say, from Fleetwood, that's a promising young signing. Patrick Roberts, he's a player with a point to prove and the quality there to do so. Danny Bat, as you say, again, another solid defensive option, plenty of experience to help some of the younger loanees. I'm thinking of, say, a Callum Doyle in that back line. So I think obviously there's a bit of a risk there to be making these changes to the playing squad at the same time as changing a manager, but nevertheless, solid signing. So I've gone for a B.
Right, final two now. Wigan up first, second in the table. Josh McGuinness, Graham Shinney arrive, Glenn Ray as well. Little done in terms of outgoings by the Latics. What are you grading Wigan?
I think this has been a very good window for Wigan. Hey, I think, as we say, not lost any of the really key players for them, so that was important. Jamie Jones, obviously, sort of maybe the headliner or on loan to St Mirren, he never really got going as he sort of expected he might have done after his move to the DW in the summer. So that sort of cleared a bit of space. It seems as though it might have helped them as well with McGrath moving in the other direction, and that's a good signing, obviously, given the sort of the interest that there seemed to be in him earlier in January. Shinney, that's a really good signing. Obviously, Wigan sort of taking advantage of the situation at Derby, which, as sort of some pointed out, a bit ironic given Wigan's past situation, even more so given Derby went and signed David Marshall and Nathan Byrne from the Latics when Wigan were in their own administration troubles. But nevertheless, Shinney is a really good player, could still do it in the Championship for Derby and was. So to get him in a League One promotion battle is really useful. And as well as that, Josh McGuinness provides them with the centre-forward option that they sort of needed and wanted, given the unfortunate situation with Charlie White. And then the permanent signing, finally, after several loan moves, of Curtis Till will be hugely pleasing for Latics fans, given how good he's been during his loan spells from Rotherham. And although the Millers obviously were willing to let him go, it'd still be quite pleasing for Wigan to get him from a promotion rival. So I think when you look at all that business, it has been a very good window for the Latics.
Absolutely. Finally then, Wycombe Wanderers, 5th in the table at the minute. Lewis Wing has arrived permanently, I think, from Middlesbrough, and Jack Young has signed from Newcastle. They're just a couple of the headlines from Wycombe's window. What are you grading Wycombe then, Toby?
Yeah, it's been a quiet one, really, hasn't it, for Wycombe? Hence why I've just gone for a C here. Just not really a lot to shout about. I think the late signing of Lewis Wing is a bit of a coup to swoop in and get him like that, because obviously we've seen he can play in the Championship and he can make an impact in the second tier. So to get him here and on a permanent as well, that really helps too. You know, in terms of the potential long-term options it gives Gareth Ainsworth. But I mean, beyond that, like we say, there's not a lot been done, and I just do worry slightly about whether or not that will give them enough when you sort of compare that with some of the other teams they're competing with for promotion who've perhaps done more, or, you know, kept the services of some more key players. Hence why, in comparison to them, I've just gone for a C for Wycombe.
That concludes this afternoon's debate show. We've rattled through 24 clubs, then grading them. You know, some good, some not so good. Thanks to Toby for joining me and taking a lead with those grades. I think you've done a fine job there. If anyone does want to debate them with Toby further, though, I'm sure his DMs will be open on Twitter, so you can get stuck into what he's had to say there. You're back as well for the League Two show tomorrow, aren't you, Toby?
No, got to do it all again. Can't wait. Should be. Hopefully, I can show that I know as much about League Two as I do about, or as much as I think I do about League One.
Yeah, good stuff. So make sure you tune in for that show tomorrow as we conclude looking at the January transfer window as a whole. And between now and then, take care.